back to the Clintons. Bill and Hillary have agreed to testify in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this comes just as lawmakers were preparing to take the rare step of holding the former president and former Secretary of State in contempt of Congress. There has been a lot of back and forth between Congress and the Clintons' attorneys. Now here we have a letter from the House Oversight Committee telling them they are not above the law and will not get special treatment. This letter from the House Oversight to the Clintons' attorneys. Representative James Comer had this to say before the vote this week. Listen.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern. I urge the Rules Committee to grant a prompt rule for the House's consideration of both the resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former President of the United States, William J. Clinton, in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, and the resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former Secretary of State, Hillary R. Clinton, in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with the subpoena duly issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law and require compliance. Former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for a deposition before the House Oversight Committee. They refused, and actions have consequences. Last July, Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee's Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee unanimously approved a voice vote, a motion to subpoena former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton for depositions as part of our investigation into the federal government's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell criminal cases. On August 5th, I issued subpoenas to them. The testimonies of President Clinton and Secretary Clinton are critical to understanding Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking network and the ways he sought to curry favor and influence to shield himself from scrutiny. In fact, then Secretary of State Clinton would have signed off on the annual Trafficking in Persons report. In 2010, under Secretary Clinton's tenure, that report began covering trafficking within the United States. Given her service as Secretary of State, she could provide firsthand information about the federal government's efforts to combat international sex trafficking. Their testimony may also inform how Congress can strengthen laws to better combat human trafficking. Since issuing the subpoenas, the Oversight Committee has acted in good faith. We've offered flexibility on scheduling. We've tried to accommodate. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance, repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction. President Clinton and Secretary Clinton claimed to have been treated unfairly because the Oversight Committee accepted written statements under penalty of law from former U.S. Attorneys Gonzalez, Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as former FBI Director Comey. Those written statements were accepted because none of those officials recalled any information relevant to the Epstein investigation, nor could we find any evidence that they did have personal relationships with Epstein. By contrast, the Oversight Committee required in-person testimony from former U.S. Attorney General Barr and former U.S. Secretary of Labor and U.S. Attorney Acosta, both Republicans, because they possessed information directly relevant to the investigation. The Clintons had documented relationships with Epstein and Maxwell, including President Clinton's trips with Epstein and Maxwell, evidenced by numerous photographs, flight log records, wedding invitations, and other materials. We repeatedly informed the Clintons' attorneys that a written statement would not be sufficient. The subpoenas required a deposition. Federal courts have consistently held that witnesses may not impose their own conditions upon the manner of congressional inquiry. Yet President Clinton and Secretary Clinton attempted to do exactly that, submitting a brief, bulleted written statement that was neither comprehensive nor responsive to the Oversight Committee's many unanswered questions. No person, not a former president or a private citizen, may willfully defy a duly issued congressional subpoena without consequence. And there can be no doubt that this bipartisan congressional subpoena was lawful and duly issued, as Ranking Member Garcia confirmed for the record during the committee's markup. The Clintons have flatly refused to appear at all, despite repeated warnings that the Oversight Committee would move forward with contempt proceedings. 2 weeks ago, the Oversight Committee voted on a bipartisan basis to hold both President Clinton and Secretary Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with their subpoenas. President Clinton must be held accountable for his actions. Secretary Clinton must be held accountable for her actions. The Rules Committee and the full House must take this opportunity to uphold Congress's investigative authority. And we must do so to demonstrate to the American people that justice is applied equally to everyone, regardless of position, pedigree, or prestige.
Well, the Clintons' legal team informed the committee late yesterday that the Clintons accepted the terms of the request and will appear for depositions on mutually agreed dates. Comer says he will consult with committee members before deciding whether to proceed with contempt votes.